are living a life but are lost, and that unless somebody tells them about the gospel, about Jesus, about his love for them, about his compassion and care for them. And that is why we've been put in this world, to go into all the world and make disciples.
Welcome to Season 5 of the Echoes International podcast, The Same Commission.
I'm Jim Armstrong.
And I'm Matthew Pitts.
And together we explore all things mission with a guest each week.
So if you don't know much about cross-cultural mission,
or you've been a faithful supporter for years,
this is the podcast for you. You're listening to the Echoes International podcast, The Same Commission, where we're here with our guest and good friend, Mike Packer.
Nice to meet you again.
It's lovely to have you face to face.
Yep.
Normally we would actually do it through screens and Zoom, and we talk all the time through Zoom and Teams, but it's actually great to have you with us. And he's so well known to us because not only is he a mission partner with Echoes International, he's actually working as part of our member care team as well. So good to have you.
Yes, that dual role. It's nice to be with you.
Yeah, indeed. And that's alongside his wife, Alison. And Alison and Mike have served in France for many years as mission partners in a variety of different ministries, actually. The Lord has led you in a few different ways. And we'll be really keen to hear all about that as we have our conversation today.
Look forward to sharing with you how the Lord led and how the Lord has been with us ever since we've been in France. Yeah.
So let's get started. Just for those who are listening, we've been doing podcasts on mission stories and how folk get involved in mission. And so this is just another one of those stories. So it'd be good just to give us an understanding, Mike, about what got you interested in mission initially.
Well, I became a Christian when I was just before I was 18 through the Christian Union, and I very quickly was involved. It was in Bath, in Manvers Hall in Bath, an assembly there, and I was very quickly involved in different things in the assembly. I saw missionaries coming back and giving reports, and that was great. But I couldn't say I had a great interest. What changed a lot of things was a person in the assembly started organising mission weekends, where they invited a missionary or two missionaries. I can't remember how many were there, but from sort of Friday night to the Sunday afternoon. And a group of young people from Manvers Hall and from other assemblies were invited to come and listen, talk with the person, listen to how the person came to going to the mission field, things like that. And I was invited to go, and I was a bit reluctant to go to start with. Not that I wasn't interested, but just I wasn't that interested, but the person that, Ian Reese at the time, persevered with me, and so I did go along, and I was really struck by what God was doing in the lives of these, I say ordinary people, because just God had called people with different gifting, with different personalities to his service, and just to see how God was using them. And at the end of the first session, I think it was, they said, well, it would be really good if you wrote to a missionary, because at that time, this is a long, long time ago, we didn't have email or anything like that.
Got your quill out.
Yes, exactly. And my ink, that's right.
Carrier pigeon.
So I didn't know who to write to. So what I did was, it's not very spiritual at all, but I got the Daily Prayer Guide, the Echoes Daily Prayer Guide, and I looked in it, and I looked for the person that had gone out on the mission field the most recently and who was fairly young. And it was David Sutherland, who was in France. And so I wrote to David, and I think I virtually said, I've been told to write to you as a missionary. So I said, it's not always, the best motivations aren't always there. And can you tell me something about what you're doing in France? And he wrote back a letter which really humbled me, just sharing with me what he did each day, his program. And I just felt really challenged to pray for him and what he was doing. And that's where I believe God started putting in my heart an interest for mission and being involved in mission. And the involvement in mission was firstly through prayer and just through prayer. And that expanded then in just, I had a big map. I was living at home. I wasn't married, anything like that. And I had a big map on my bedroom wall. And I put pictures of the missionaries where they were in France. And I wrote to another organisation as well, Lord's Work Trust, and asked if they knew knew any other people that were working in France from assemblies at the time. And after a while, they wrote back and they gave me the names of Gospel Listener Outreach missionaries that are in France. Anyway, from there became a real interest to pray for all these people. So that's where the interest started. Yeah.
And that's really interesting, actually, and ties in really nicely with kind of our DNA at Echoes is prayer before everything else. And actually, the encouragement that we would hope everybody listening to this podcast takes is prayer first, isn't it? And actually, the way in which the Lord has used that in your life to, I suppose, to develop a love for mission and a love for the particularly mission in France.
Yeah.
So you were praying for mission, and you gradually were developing that particular interest in praying for mission in France. How did the Lord then call you to go and serve in France initially?
Again, I think it's gradual. It wasn't immediate. I think because when you talk about involvement in mission and you think about going, I felt totally involved in mission where I was because I was praying. And as people wrote back to me, because they shared prayer subjects, we talked about people. I heard back about how people that had become to the Lord had become Christians, of what had been going on. And I felt totally part of that mission abroad, even though I wasn't there.
Because you were a partner.
Because I was a partner
in the gospel.
in it, exactly. And it was thrilling to me. I suddenly thought, I'm seeing how God is working, and it's wonderful. Really, a real encouragement to me. Then, because I said I'd started praying for some of the Glow missionaries that were in France, and I met one of them, Sam Gibson, and then I just thought, I could do. They had Glow teams at that time, short-term teams, and I went on a short-term team to Le Mans in the west of France for 2 weeks, and I went back again the next year, and that as well developed a real interest in actually seeing. I didn't speak much French because I'd been thrown out of my French class at school, so that wasn't very good.
Strong start.
Good, strong start, that's right. So I was doing O-level French, and they put me out of that into my CSE French, which is a much lower grade, and even then I didn't really succeed at it. But there was a real desire just to, I saw how God was working in a very small church, in a pioneer situation. That was the start of thinking, and it was as if God was saying to me, if I asked you to go, would you go? I didn't feel God was saying go, but it was, are you willing to obey? If I asked you to do something, would you? And my family circumstances were really complicated at that time, and I just could not see how, in my family circumstances, I could possibly go somewhere else. And so basically the answer was, I can't go. And then over time, the Lord, to me, miraculously changed a family circumstance. Humanly speaking, it could not change, and it did, which freed me to be available perhaps for mission. And it was a real way that God led, I think, in confirming certain things. I also, my assembly in Bath, Mammoth Hall, that they knew about my interest and supported me in that interest. When I first started talking about, I think God is calling me to France, as I'd read scriptures, as I visited missionaries, their wisdom to me was, no, wait, which was quite hard. But I believe they had the spiritual authority in my life. I really felt that was very important. And so that even though I found it hard, I decided I would wait, because what they said to me very simply was, for spiritual maturity, you should wait. For language learning, you should go. So you just need to wait a bit. And so over the next 2 years, I waited. And then I went back to them after 2 years and said, I really feel that God is calling me to France, and that the Glow mission team in Marseille were inviting me to go and join that team as well. And they said, we believe now is the time, and we will send you as a missionary from our assembly to that work.
It's always quite exciting, I guess, when you start in mission and you start to serve. But there must have been challenges for you when you set out and you go to the country. You might just talk us through some of that.
When I knew that I really was convinced that God was calling me to France. I started learning French again with a lady in my assembly. God provides in all sorts of ways. Who was a French teacher who took me just for an hour a week on a Saturday morning and learning French. I went to language school. And it's very practical details that I hope you don't mind me sharing with it. But
not at all.
the financial aspect of it, which was with the French franc was in existence then, before euros. It's a long, long time ago. And I'd sold my car, I'd sold everything I had to pay myself through language school. And then the French franc dropped against the pound or went the other way. And basically it was 30 to 40% less valuable. And all my calculations just went out. Just they weren't there, and I didn't have enough money to pay through language school, so it was a real stress for me, and I didn't know what to do. But even in that circumstance, God did provide in very small ways, but just enough for me to get through language school. So that I think the financial aspect, I was used to working in a job, to getting my salary, and it's there, and I knew it was there, and I did find it a bit hard to have that trusting confidence in God's, but God taught me through circumstances to trust, and since then it's virtually 40 years today that I've been in France, and God has always been faithful and honoured our commitment to serve Him in France. Other challenges: leaving family.
Yeah.
My mum was a widow. She was on her own. There was nobody else. I found that quite complicated to leave her. I was quite protective of my mother. My mother wasn't involved in assemblies, we can put it that way, at that time. And I said, if you thought I was going to France as a missionary, how would you think about that? And my father had died just a few years before. And she said, before your father died, we talked about you going to France because we saw your interest in it as a missionary. And you could have knocked me over because I was just so... But how God had prepared even my mother its families are important as well, but God takes care of families as well. So that was difficult, but yet God had provided even in those circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful there, Mike, just talking through those things, because I think, very few of the things that you're talking about there are particularly specific to you, but they're actually challenges that are faced by so many new mission partners or potential mission partners. If you just think of those who encouraged you along the way, and perhaps what things that they did that or things that they said that were particularly helpful, because we're conscious that we'll have people listening who are keen to serve and go. But probably the majority of people will be in a position where actually they are the encourager.
Yeah.
So what role has encouragement played in service to the Lord in mission?
Yeah, it's been different at different times as well. I said it's 40 years now that we've been in France, so it's a long time. Working in a team, first of all, was really precious, I believe, for us, that we had people that had slightly more experience that could help us settle into the country. We were working in evangelism and church planting in an area where there was no church. There was nothing. There absolutely, it was in the south area of Marseille. So there was nothing. So to be on your own completely as a couple, coming from quite a sheltered Christian environment where I was saved in an assembly, brought up in that assembly, and then I left that assembly. I hadn't been anywhere else. So I don't say I was naive, but the experience in that area was probably lacking, even though I was convinced God was calling me. It's to have a team around me that would be there, that you could pray with, that you could talk with, and that you could serve with as well, and look to. For support was important. My assembly, as I said, were always, we have two assemblies. We have, it was Leckwith Gospel Hall at the time, supported us and were in contact with us and asked us for prayer subjects and things like that. And then individuals, we have individuals that for 40 years have supported us financially and prayed for us. I was talking to somebody the other day, just this weekend, who said, I pray for you every week. And that goes back 25, 30 years. They pray for our children, our 4 children. They pray for our ministry. So the support of prayer is vital. I think it's just people, you recognize people's love for us as people. and they're concerned for us. My wife went through all sorts of health problems for many years. Alison was near death's door several times, and they were complicated times for us as a family, with a young family, with her in hospital for months on end. It was, and people wrote, said it was a different sort of time. The communication wasn't quite the same, but they wrote and they expressed and they phoned to say that they were thinking about us, that we were not forgotten. And I think that has been one of the key things. We weren't with them physically, but we were never forgotten, and we were always remembered. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Mike. We'll stop here and we'll rejoin after the break.
How can we respond to God's call? Pray. The most important thing we can do is pray. Pray for our brothers and sisters across the world, and for the good news about the Lord Jesus to reach all nations of this world. Learn. Learn more about the needs of the world, unreached people groups, or the work of mission organizations. Perhaps sign up for prayer reminders or read biographies of mission partners. Keep yourself informed of how God is moving through His church. Support. Support mission prayerfully, financially, sacrificially. Find out how you can support mission partners already serving, or help mission projects set up by local brothers and sisters in other countries. Go. Perhaps God is calling you to go. Speak with those that you have confidence in spiritually, and take the time to gain insight and advice from church elders and mission organizations. What a joy to step out in faith, knowing that our Lord and Saviour has gone before. Echoes International. Together with joy.
Welcome back to the Same Commission as we explore stories of mission from around the world. We're here with our good friend Mike Packer.
Just following through on that, when you think of the first steps and starting to serve, particularly in Marseille, what were the kind of key things that the Lord was teaching you as you started in your missionary service?
That we lived in a lost world. I think it was I would always get quite emotional about it, because you realise that people are living a life but are lost, and that unless somebody tells them about the gospel, about Jesus, about his love for them, about his compassion and care for them, and that is why we've been put in this world, to go into all the world and make disciples. And yeah, it was a difficult area, but yet that was what God has sent us to do, and to hang on to the calling that we received. I mentioned David Sutherland earlier on. One thing that David said to me really early on was to write down what you believed God was telling you. Because he said, when you write it down, there'll be moments in your service for God when you think this is just not working. He said, but when you're convinced that God has called you, go back to what God said to you. Go back to the verses that God gave you. Go back to what people said to you, the confirmation you had. Go back to it and trust God, because that hasn't changed, unless obviously you're convinced that you should be then moving on. And that was always very precious to us. So learning to trust in God, learning that I was not the only one serving God, and it wasn't my ministry, that we needed others, that I had to learn as well. I had to learn about how to reach out to French people, that people would often listen to you and not understand you to start with because of the language difficulties. That when I was in Marseille has a completely different accent to the rest of France. Marseille is looked upon very differently, adapting to culture, I suppose. How people are adapting to new believers, becoming Christians, and all that they bring, and how you deal with them and disciple them. I mean, I was only 25, 26, 27. I was quite young myself, to say the least. So that was a challenge. And that you see that God takes you and develops you in your service for him. and that what we do now is probably, I don't say it's nothing like it because it is, but it's quite different because we've matured in our service for God, and God has called us into other avenues of service as well. So to be dependent on God and to listen to God throughout that service, to be attentive to what He says through His Word, and what I would say, bounce things off other believers that you trust, that you have confidence in. It's your assembly elders, perhaps back in, and other more mature believers, and not be frightened to say things, even though they might not be the acceptable things to say, but at least say them so that somebody can input into your life when it's a bit more difficult.
So, Mike, if you cast your mind back to those early days when you were serving in France, what memories do you have of that in terms of the sort of conversations you had with different people, and those early contacts with people, whether that's believers or people who actually didn't know the Lord at that time?
I think the first contact, there was already another church plant that had started in the town of Marseille, so we would go along to that, not in any leadership role at all, just we would go along. And the enthusiasm of the believers that had come from a very dark past, young couples that came, really, it was a tremendous story of salvation, how God took them out of literally living the night. That's where they were, and they would steal and all sorts of that. Things like that, and they were remarkably saved, and just the freshness of that, that new life in Christ was always refreshing, and always then I think motivated us as well to be faithful in that calling to preach and to reach out to people in the other part of the city, which I said was a much more affluent side of the city, which sometimes made it a lot more difficult because I think people
sort of self-reliance,
and they don't see that they've got everything.
It's not the same need as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, so that was a challenge. We had Glow teams that came and helped us as well, and did a lot of literature distribution there. And one of them was called Coming Out of the Night, and it's interesting when the different types of literature that you use, and because it was coming out of the night, the sort of people that responded were people from a very depressive, dark background. So a lot of the people I first met were people like that when you went and visited them. And I would sometimes be quite nervous. My heart would be slightly beating because I didn't quite feel very confident knocking on everybody's door with my French was okay, but you would see and hear that I wasn't French at that time anyway. And I remember that it's just a stupid story, but we had one guy I had to go and see, and so a lady opened the door, and I said, "Oh, because you brought him a book." That's what he asked for, this book. And she said, "Oh, he's in his bedroom. You can go on through." I was like, "Oh, all right then." And I went on through, and just as you go through, there was this guy sitting on his bed with all sorts of knives, long knives, cleaning these knives like that. and I was sort of quite disturbed. So I started
quite
saying
hello,
who I was, and offered him. But anyways, there was no problem at all. But it's just slightly disturbing to have. I don't know how many knives. I can't remember what they were, but there were a lot of knives, shining big knives on the bed. But the thing was, gradually through contact through the team members and through other people, Bible studies were started. There were Bible studies that you couldn't see across the other side of the room because there was so much smoke, where people were smoking. You had people from all sorts of backgrounds that had no concept of the Bible, no knowledge of the Bible, no knowledge of who Jesus was, and gradually their knowledge grew. Again, just see people turn their lives over to Christ and trust in Him was really good. We used music a lot as well. At that time, Sam Gibson still is a musician and a singer, and we had other musicians that were there, and you'd go into different areas and do concerts that people perhaps would be more in contact with the gospel through that way. So yeah, conversations were always important. Helping people, it's a privilege, isn't it? You help people to understand the gospel. Often you talk about teaching the gospel, isn't it? The gift of teaching, and the evangelist teaches the gospel to people. And I don't see myself as an evangelist. I've seen people come to faith as I've talked to them. But whether you're an evangelist or not, the greatest thing you'll ever see is a soul, a person that's saved. And yeah, we were witnesses to that and still are, of God's saving grace in people's lives. And that is precious, really precious, yeah.
As you look back over the 40 years, and you've mentioned some individuals, it'd be good just to be encouraged by a couple of stories that just highlights the difference that the gospel has made in their life.
A unique situation when you're back in the, I said, sort of late 80s, early 90s, when HIV was prevalent. And we came across and met a young guy called Philippe, who was HIV positive at that time. Made a commitment to Christ, but obviously was dying. Basically, that was there was no hope from it all. There was no treatment, and people at that time would have no contact. Would be frightened of any contact with people, and just to be able to input into his life, to walk alongside him, a lovely, sincere guy who got AIDS through drug abuse. Basically, that's how he got it. Very honest. He was a responsible young guy. When he was in the church, when we had the breaking of wine, he would always be the last person that would take things. But just to see the reality of God in his life, and he knew he was dying, and he died a horrible death. It was really, really unpleasant. And to be able to witness to his family afterwards, they asked me to go and to talk to them and to talk about Philippe's faith as well. So when you know that, humanly speaking, there is no hope, there's no future at all, but yet Christ has won the victory. And death has no sting anymore, and for Philippe that was the case. Perhaps another person, a lady that we came across in Laval, in the city of Laval, who Bernadette, who if she ever listens to this, she'll know who she is. She was a school teacher and met some other people who witnessed to her, but basically she became a Christian because she started reading the Bible herself, and came to a knowledge of who Christ was just through reading the Gospels, and came to a knowledge that Jesus was her only Saviour, who had been sort of brought up in Catholicism and humanism and all sorts of, and communism as well with her husband, and to see how God can reach into people's lives even when there's nobody there. And she just got hold of a Bible, read it, and then thought there must be other people that are like this, and then found this other couple, and then came to the church, and is still in the Laval church now, 30, I don't know how many years later, is still there. So yeah, testimonies of grace, and how God seeks out people and uses us to reach them. It's good.
Amen. We always ask to end the podcast what we can be praying for you and Alison at this time now. And obviously your ministry has changed a little bit. You've gone to prison.
Serving in prison.
Not
going to prison.
I know. Just in terms of where you're at now is a little bit different. But if you can just talk us through what you do now and how we can pray for that. At the stage you're now at.
Yes,
we'll fast forward a few years, but
so now we're in 2025. In case anybody's watching this later on, but we work with Echoes International now, and our part of our ministry is in member care, which is walking alongside people as they serve God across the world. And I think it's because over the past years, that's something that the Lord has developed in us, that pastoral care for people that are going into full-time work, full-time ministry or part-time ministry, whatever it is. And that is a real privilege, I think. I don't think you have to have experience to be able to do that, but the reality is we have lived moving from one country to another, learning another language, looking to God for finance as well, the pressures of illness, being away from family, all sorts of things like that. And we believe we can be of help to people that are serving God across the world. So that is something, that we would have the energy, the stamina and the wisdom to work that through and help people. And the other side of our ministry still is involved in mission. Alison is involved in a lot of youth work, and is very much again the big sister or mother, or sometimes grandmother, because our
You
age.
said that,
hang
not
on.
Sorry.
So if she's listening to this, this is the point where you're going to start getting some stick.
I'm only repeating what she says. I would only do that for my dear wife, so that young women especially can come and talk about issues that they have in life. She has a real heart for young adults as well, as they mature in their faith. And another aspect is I chair in France a structure called La Maison de la Bible, House of the Bible, which has a desire to see the scriptures just given out through the French-speaking world. So we raise funds, in fact, so that people don't have to pay for that. And many years now, we brought out a low-cost Bible in France, which was the Bible for the price of a coffee, which is sold in big supermarkets now.
I've come across
Yeah,
it.
that's
It's
right.
exciting.
And it's in other languages as well. But that was basically started with this association, and it's been a real, it's been an amazing tool. Again, how people can be used. I don't know if I got time to say it, but a guy that we knew that was a sales guy amongst big, supermarkets, distribution, things like that. A believer said, "You produce it, I'll get it into Auchan, Leclerc, Carrefour, all these massive hypermarkets." And he said, "I'll go and do it. That's my job." And he went in, and it's in all these supermarkets. It's in the cultural bookshops, and is the bestseller in all these sort of cultural areas now, because he was able, in his mission, in his Christian life, to use his skills as a salesperson to go in, and the Bible is available to so many people now that would have never been available before.
I think there are specific things in there to pray for as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's very encouraging. Just to say thank you. Genuinely, it is great to sit with you. Normally we're talking through a screen, so it's good just to do this podcast as we've done it. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for coming.
Pleasure.
You can now use the title "Friend of the Show."
I can. I will have a badge made.
There you go.
Thank you.
Indeed. Thanks, Mike.